In the middle of a vast and unforgiving desert, there lay a small village teetering on the brink of collapse. The once fertile soil had become cracked and lifeless under the relentless heat of the sun. The village's only water source, a narrow well, had long run dry, leaving its people with barely enough water to survive. That afternoon, as the sun burned high in the sky, the heat was unbearable. Waves of shimmering heat rose from the ground, and the air felt thick and suffocating. Even the strongest among the villagers moved sluggishly, drained by exhaustion and defeat. The village elder, his face lined with worry, knew they had reached the end of their strength. Gathering everyone in the village square, he wiped the sweat from his brow and spoke with a heavy heart. "We have tried everything, digging, planting, rationing. The land has turned against us and the water is gone. We cannot survive like this." He looked at the weary faces around him and continued, "Now, we must turn to the only one who can save us. Let us call upon God and ask for his mercy. Only he can bring us the miracle we need." The villagers knelt on the scorching ground, their hands clasped together, their voices trembling with desperation as they prayed, "Lord, hear our cries. We are lost without you. Please have mercy on us. Bring us water for our fields and hope for our hearts. Save our village, O Lord." As the villagers knelt and prayed in the fading light, their voices carried across the desert. Little did they know a miracle was already on its way. The next morning, as the first rays of sunlight pierced the horizon, the villagers stirred from their restless sleep. The air was already heavy with heat, promising another scorching day. But something unusual broke the monotony. A figure appeared at the village gate. It was an old man, dressed simply, leaning on a wooden staff, with an old fabric bag slung over his shoulder. His face was weathered, yet his eyes held a calm, knowing expression. The villagers, curious but cautious, slowly approached him, whispering among themselves. The old man greeted them with a gentle nod and spoke in a steady voice. "Good morning. My name is Jonas. I am just a traveler passing through. I have heard of your struggles, and I would like to share something that might help you." The villagers exchanged wary glances. It was rare for strangers to come to their isolated village, and rarer still for anyone to offer help. Jonas, undeterred by their skepticism, opened his bag and pulled out a handful of peculiar-looking seeds. They shimmered faintly in the sunlight, as if holding a secret of their own. "These are no ordinary seeds," Jonas explained, his voice steady yet filled with quiet conviction. "If you plant them with love, care, and unity, they will grow into enormous fruits and crops capable of sustaining your entire village." The villagers murmured among themselves. Some looked intrigued, while others remained skeptical. Finally, a young man stepped forward and asked the question on everyone's mind. "Why should we trust you? How do we know this isn't some kind of trick?" Jonas smiled gently, his eyes meeting those of the young man. "Trusting me is not what matters," he said. "What matters is whether you trust yourselves. Are you willing to set aside your doubts and work together for a chance at saving your village?" His words hung in the air, challenging yet hopeful. The villagers fell silent, their skepticism battling with the faint glimmer of hope that had been absent for so long. The elder of the village stepped forward, his voice calm but resolute. "We have nothing to lose. If there is even the slightest chance this will work, we must try." Jonas nodded approvingly, handing a portion of the seeds to the elder. He then divided the rest among the families, ensuring that each household received an equal share. As he did, he left them with one final instruction. "These seeds will test not only the soil but also your hearts. Over the next 7 days, plant and care for them together. On the 7th day I will return to see what you have achieved." With that, Jonas shouldered his bag and walked toward the village square, his figure blending into the shimmering heat waves. For the poorest families who owned no land and had no wells of their own, the decision was simple. They gathered together and proposed working as a group. "Let us use the abandoned field near the edge of the village," one suggested. "It may not be the best soil, but if we work together, we can make it fertile." The families agreed, pooling their meager resources. They shared the precious water from the village's nearly dry stream, rationing it carefully to ensure every plant received enough. They took turns tending the soil, planting the seeds with care, and watching over the field night and day. Despite the scorching heat and the back-breaking labor, they encouraged each other with words of hope. "This is our one chance. If we work together, we can make it happen." When one family ran low on water, another shared what little they had. When one grew too weary to work, others stepped in to help. There was no room for selfishness, only unity and the shared dream of a bountiful harvest. While the poor worked together, Hernas, the wealthiest landowner in the village, watched from the comfort of his shaded porch. Clutching his portion of the seeds, he scoffed at the others' efforts. "These seeds are mine," he declared to his hired workers. "My land is the best in the village, and I have my own well. I don't need anyone's help. When my crops succeed, they'll all have to buy the fruit from me." Hernas refused to share his resources. He hoarded water, ensuring his personal well remained full while the rest of the village rationed theirs. He instructed his workers to plant the seeds quickly, paying little attention to the soil or spacing. He didn't bother to tend the field himself, confident that his superior land and water supply would guarantee success. "Those fools," he muttered, watching the poor families toil under the hot sun. "They'll waste their time on that barren field while I grow the finest crops in the village." On the morning of the 7th day, the villagers awoke with anticipation. The air, though still heavy with the desert heat, carried a sense of excitement. Jonas, true to his word, returned to the village as the sun began to rise. Standing in the square, he called out to everyone, "It is time. Let us gather at the shared field to see the fruits of your labor." The villagers, curious and eager, followed Jonas to the edge of the village, where the shared field of the poor families stood. What awaited them was beyond anything they could have imagined. When they arrived, the shared field was no longer barren and dusty. The villagers gasped in awe as they took in the sight. Watermelons the size of huts dotted the field, their green skins glistening under the morning sun. Corn stalks towered above the villagers, each one bearing golden ears of corn as large as pillars. Strawberries grew in enormous clusters, each fruit as big as a basket, and radiating a sweet, irresistible fragrance that filled the air. The villagers broke into cheers, their joy echoing across the desert. Families embraced one another, their faces alight with gratitude and wonder. As the celebrations continued, Hernes watched from a distance, his face dark with suspicion. He muttered under his breath, "Let them enjoy their moment. My field will far outshine theirs." He led the villagers to his private field, where he expected to showcase the fruits of his wealth and superiority. But when the villagers arrived, their expressions turned to shock and disappointment. Hernas' field was a dismal sight. The watermelons were hollow and rotten, their insides oozing with foul-smelling liquid. The corn stalks were tall but bore no ears, their leaves shriveled and dry. The fruit trees stood barren, with only shriveled, worm-eaten remnants hanging from the branches. A stunned silence fell over the villagers. Unable to contain his anger, Hernas stormed up to Jonas and shouted, "You tricked me! These seeds you gave me were defective. Why did my crops fail while theirs succeeded?" Jonas looked at Hernas, his face calm but his voice firm. "I did not trick you, Hernas. The seeds I gave you were the same as the seeds I gave to everyone else, but these seeds require more than soil and water. They require love, care, and a spirit of unity. You planted them with greed and selfishness, and the land rejected them." Hernas tried to argue, but his words faltered. Hernas stood alone, his face red with shame, as the truth of Jonas's words sank in. The miracle had not been in the seeds alone, but in the hearts of those who had sown them. And now, the entire village understood. At that moment, a young boy named Noah, who had been quietly observing Jonas throughout the week, noticed something remarkable. On Jonas' hands were scars resembling nail marks, marks he had heard about in stories of the Savior. Noah exclaimed, "He's not just a traveler, he's Jesus. He came to save us." The villagers were stunned. Slowly they fell to their knees, bowing their heads in awe. The village elder said, "You are the Savior. You came to teach us the greatest lesson of all. Please, stay with us." Jonas smiled warmly and replied, "I did not come to be praised. I came to help you see the power within yourselves. The miracle is not in the seeds, it is in how you care for each other. Live with love and unity, and you will never be in need." With those words, Jonas turned and walked toward the horizon. As the sunlight enveloped him, he vanished into the light, leaving behind only his wooden staff planted firmly in the shared field where the miraculous crops continued to grow. The villagers renamed the shared field the Land of Miracles in honor of the extraordinary harvest. Towering corn stalks, watermelons as large as huts, and strawberries the size of baskets served as daily reminders of what they had accomplished together. As Noah grew up, he became the storyteller of the village, often pointing to the miraculous fruits as he said, "Jesus didn't just bring us food. He taught us how to create miracles with love, unity, and faith." The field and its lesson lived on, inspiring generations to come,